Alex from Houston, Deluxe Man. With the upcoming move to USA Network approaching, WWE could be looking to beef up the NXT roster in order to fill up 2 hours of weekly content. My question is, if you had the power to choose 10 former NXT talents to move back to the black and gold brand, who would you choose? It can be from Raw, SmackDown Live, or 205 Live. I wouldn't. 10 talents, that's way too many. That is way too many. That's the worst thing they could do to NXT, would be to flood it with 10 faces from the main roster. It would just be overkill. And then maybe if you cycled them out over a period of a couple of years or something, but I would not move that many people. And maybe that's not what you mean, but that's kind of how I took it. I would not move that many faces back to NXT. Would I move some? Yes. And I tried to narrow it down to 3. I've got 3 names in mind who I think could benefit from a move and could also help the brand. Cesaro. Cesaro is stuck in a utility role on the main roster. He's not in the worst spot in the world. He's been a tag team champion and he's been, at times he's been prominently featured, but he's been mostly used as a tag team guy. Whether it was Cesaro and Tyson Kidd, Cesaro and Jack Swagger, Cesaro and Sheamus, they clearly do not see a real future for him. It's been 5 or 6 years by now, at least, as a real force as a single star. And I think that's bullshit. Because I think he's got a lot to give as a single star. So Cesaro is a guy who I would move to NXT. NXT, he could be more of a featured player who could go out there. He could have great matches and work well with pretty much anybody they put him in the ring with. And I know he's spending most of his time these days on the NXT UK brand, but if Cassius Ohno ever wandered back to NXT, or maybe Cesaro would wander on over to NXT UK. I just love the idea, however brief it may be. Even if it's for one frickin' match, one big match they promote on TV, I would love to get a Kings of Wrestling reunion. So, anyway, Cesaro would be one. Chad Gable would be another. Chad Gable has been utterly wasted since hitting the main roster, and I don't mean he has a drinking problem. He has been utterly wasted since going to the main roster, and I am very worried about where this shorty nonsense is headed. Chad Gable back in NXT, even as a single. He was a tag team guy the last time he was there, but even as a single, I think could be a big get for NXT, and it could really give him a shot in the arm as far as his own career goes. And the third name would be Asuka. If NXT is no longer a developmental brand, and it hasn't been for a while. It has been the land of the independent stars. It's been this way for a while. Now that they're going to a real network in front of millions of people, and they're growing the show out to 2 hours, and they're going to be making all this money from the show, this is now a third brand. This is not developmental anymore. This is a third brand. So you got to change the way you look at NXT. NXT is no longer a downgrade. It's no longer a demotion. You're just going, it'd be like going from Raw to SmackDown, or SmackDown to Raw. Asuka's gone from Raw to SmackDown. Now Asuka can go from SmackDown to NXT. Because Asuka is another one who has been utterly lost on the main roster. Let her find her way back to NXT, where she never lost, by the way, to be the gatekeeper again for that women's division. You could do something if you want to with her and Shayna Baszler, who's sort of the current gatekeeper. But if Shayna leaves, if she goes to Raw, if she goes to SmackDown, which I think she will, Asuka could step in to take her place and be more of a featured player than she is ever going to be on Mondays or on Fridays. One day she could go back there and maybe even get the, she can go back to Raw or SmackDown and get that elusive rematch with Becky Lynch, the woman she tapped out at the Royal Rumble. I mean, hell, she could use that as her calling card in NXT. I made the man tap out. You can't beat me. Nobody can beat me. Nobody can beat Asuka. Nobody is ready for Asuka. Becky Lynch wasn't ready for Asuka. Then when somebody finally does beat her in NXT, just by her drilling that point in week after week, when somebody finally does beat her, it's It's going to mean something. It's going to mean something for that person. It's going to elevate them. So Cesaro, Gable, and Asuka. Those would be my 3 names. If I had to pick 3 names from the existing brands to migrate over to NXT to help that show out and help their own career, it would be those 3. Because they do have name value. They don't have the same kind of name value that people who are on TV every week have. It's not like moving Seth Rollins over or Daniel Bryan over. You know, these are people in some cases who were barely even featured on TV, but they have been on the main roster. So they would at least have some name recognition. And so there's that too, if you want to use that as a reason why they should be moved over. What happens to Kairi Sane? You can move her over too, I guess. I wouldn't keep them together as a team. I think they need to just do their own thing. Kairi, if you leave Kairi behind, is she going to get lost in the shuffle? Yes. But Asuka had more of a shot than Kairi ever did. Kairi still has not gotten a shot at all on the main roster. She's had no chance. Maybe give her a chance. See if she can make hay on the main roster. And if not, then she could end up back in NXT too. But those are the 3 names I would move over.